We are taught from a young age that kindness is a virtue, that if we're patient enough, compassionate enough, loving enough, every wound can be healed and even the most broken souls can be restored. But there's a truth few dare to say out loud. Kindness, when misplaced, can become a double-edged sword, especially when it falls into the hands of emotional manipulators. People who don't see kindness as ability, but as a weakness to exploit. In today's video, we'll expose a shocking but necessary truth, that your very kindness, when not paired with wisdom and boundaries, can become the chain that binds you to a toxic relationship. If you've ever loved someone, only to have your emotions twisted, if you've forgiven them 100 times and things only got worse, then this video is for you. This isn't just a psychological analysis. It's a wake-up call, a mirror held up to help you see yourself clearly, to understand why your goodness has been taken advantage of, and most importantly, how to reclaim the power that was always yours. Subscribe now and stay until the end of the video, because in the final part, you'll discover what most victims of narcissistic relationships overlook, something that could free you from that painful cycle once and for all. Part 1. When kindness becomes an open door for manipulation. We grow up with the deep-rooted belief that kindness will always be rewarded. From a young age, we are taught that if we are patient, forgiving, and loving enough, the world will become a better place, and that people, no matter how broken or difficult, will eventually change. We learn to forgive, to yield, to put others before ourselves. And it's true. Within healthy relationships, kindness can indeed heal, connect, and melt away even the most stubborn walls. But there's one truth that few dare to admit. Kindness, when misplaced, is not just ineffective. It can become a weapon used against you. And this is especially true when you're in a relationship with a narcissist. A narcissist does not see your kindness as noble or worthy of respect. They are not moved by your patience. They are not healed by your compassion. Instead, they see in you a weak spot, an open door. To them, kindness is not a sign of inner strength, but an opportunity to manipulate, control, and expand their dominion over your mind and emotions. The more patient you are, the further they push. The more you forgive, the more they dominate. The softer you become, the more cunning they grow. And one day you realize that your kindness, the very light of your soul, is being used to reinforce a toxic cycle you didn't create but are now trapped within. Many of us don't recognize this until the damage is deep, until our kindness has morphed into self-abandonment. We begin to yield not out of love, but out of fear. We grow silent, not from empathy, but from exhaustion. We stay not because we have hope, but because we've forgotten how to leave. And in that moment, the narcissist wins. Not because they are stronger, but because they have turned your most beautiful quality into a tool for their distorted ego. What makes a narcissist dangerous isn't always blatant cruelty or visible abuse. It's their subtle, psychological manipulation. They don't need to scream to control you. They only need to stay silent long enough for you to blame yourself. They don't need to apologize. They just need to act wounded so that you open your heart again. They don't need to explain because you'll search for the answers for them. Bit by bit, they dig into your compassion. They exploit the values you cherish, like forgiveness, sacrifice, and empathy, and turn them into an invisible net that tightens around your life. You think you're helping them, but in reality, you're giving them permission to hurt you again and again. That's not kindness. That's a trap. And the trap only ends when you begin to see the game for what it is. When you begin to understand that not everyone deserves your compassion. When you realize that love does not mean suffering, that forgiveness does not mean erasing every boundary, and that kindness should never mean allowing someone to trample on your dignity. A narcissist does not change because you are kinder. They do not repent because you are silent. They are not moved by your tears. In fact, they read these things like a map that leads them straight to the most vulnerable places in you. And they will return to those places again and again, like a hunter returning to the easiest ground to trap its prey. It's a hard truth, but a necessary one. Kindness is not a cure for manipulation. Kindness cannot fix someone who has no intention of changing. In toxic relationships, especially with narcissists, kindness must have limits. It must be guarded by wisdom, firm boundaries, and self-respect. Without those things, kindness stops being kindness. It becomes enabling. And if you've ever found yourself trapped in that cycle, know this. You are not weak. You didn't give too much because you were foolish. You did it because you have a big heart. But even a big heart needs a wise mind. to know whom to love, whom to forgive, and when it's time to walk away. Part 2. The true nature of a narcissist when they don't seek peace but power. In most relationships, when things begin to settle, when conflicts are resolved, and peace starts to bloom, we feel safe. We think we've finally found stability, that the other person is beginning to listen, to grow, and to change. But if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, that moment of peace is not the end of conflict. It's the warning sign of an incoming storm. Because to a narcissist, peace is not the goal. It's a threat. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, but one you must understand if you want to escape the cycle of manipulation. When you try to build a healthy space full of empathy and trust, they don't feel safe. They feel like they're losing control. And when control slips from their hands, they'll do whatever it takes to reclaim center stage in your emotional world. They begin to create chaos, not randomly, but intentionally, because chaos is the most effective control tool they've ever learned. They know that when you're confused, hurt, and asking yourself, what did I do wrong? You're at your most vulnerable. They know that if you're constantly managing their emotions, you won't have the time or energy to listen to your own. They distort reality through subtle tactics, doublespeak, denial of what they just did, playing the victim, or reversing blame onto you. One day they're sweet, making you believe maybe things will finally be okay. And the next, they're cold, distant, or erupting in anger for no reason. Each behavior is calculated to keep you emotionally off balance, so you're never strong enough to walk away. When you love a narcissist, you're not just loving a person, you're loving a carefully constructed emotional control system disguised as charm, pity, or allure. They may speak deeply, shed tears, or recount a traumatic childhood. And you, with your empathetic heart, think, if I can just be patient a little longer. But the more patient you are, the more they test your boundaries. The more you trust, the more they seek to shatter that trust. The more you stay silent to keep the peace, the further they push you from yourself. You may wonder, why stir up chaos when everything seems fine? Why burn the bridge just as it's being rebuilt? The answer lies in their fractured nature. Narcissists don't know how to maintain normal relationships because normal means they aren't in control. In peace, you begin to reflect. And when you reflect, you begin to question. And when you question, you uncover the truth. That's what they fear most, your awakening. Narcissists need emotional disarray to cloud your awareness. They need you stuck in self-doubt, constantly adjusting your behavior, policing your words. They need you to believe you are the problem, that you are the one making things a mess, because as long as you believe that, they hold all the power. This isn't random confusion. It's a psychological strategy, a way to manipulate reality, rewrite morality, and slowly erode your sense of self. That's why you feel like you're living in a fog. Nothing is clear, your emotions are jumbled, and you no longer trust what's real. Eventually, you start depending on them to tell you what the truth is. They become the lens through which you see the world. They redefine right and wrong, love and blame, forgiveness and failure. And once they control that lens, they control you. But you have a choice, and it's a courageous one, to remove that lens, to look through your own eyes again, to trust the intuition that has been screaming in silence, to believe that chaos is not love, that any relationship which constantly makes you doubt yourself is not a place you should remain. You were not born to endure manipulation. You were not born to maintain peace at the cost of your identity. And you certainly were not born to be the foundation beneath someone's illusion of power. The truth is, narcissists don't want peace. They want control. And when you begin to choose real peace, the kind that comes from clarity, healthy boundaries, and self-respect, you become a threat. Because when you awaken, they lose their grip. They can no longer control you with guilt. They can no longer punish you with silence. They can no longer bend you with blind submission. And that's when you reclaim the most precious thing of all, yourself. Part 3, when your kindness becomes a weapon. And the truth no one wants to face. It's a difficult truth. Few have the courage to confront. The very best qualities in you can be used as tools for manipulation if they are not protected by boundaries. You were taught to be compassionate, to yield, to forgive, that good people should keep the peace, show empathy, and sacrifice for others. And yes, those values are the foundation of a humane society. But here's what no one told you. When your kindness is misplaced, you're not healing, you're harming yourself. Especially when you're dealing with a narcissist. Narcissist doesn't see you as a kind-hearted person. They don't feel your sincerity, your empathy, or your selflessness. What they see is an opportunity. A person who easily empathizes is easy to sway. A person who hates conflict is easy to back down. A person who always gives others the benefit of the doubt is easy to forgive even the deepest wounds. You think you're giving out of love, but they interpret it as the green light to violate you again. When they lie, you convince yourself they must have had a reason. When they hurt you, you tell yourself maybe I overreacted. When they go silent or turn cold, you're the one who reaches out first. And over time, the more compassionate you are, the more they test your limits, and they quickly learn you have none. Narcissists are not clueless about the consequences of their actions. On the contrary, they're often highly attuned to your emotional responses. They know what makes you feel guilty. They know when you're most likely to break. They know how to twist reality, not with logic, but with guilt. And they won't hesitate to turn your kindness into a weapon against you. So every time you choose to be the bigger person, to stay quiet, to not make a big deal out of it, you are inadvertently teaching them that you will tolerate what should never be tolerated. You're not loving them. You're providing a safe space for abuse to continue. Call it what it is. Psychological warfare disguises emotional intimacy. And because it's disguised so cleverly, you end up feeling confused, conflicted, and even guilty for wanting to leave. You think, if I'm just good enough, maybe they'll change. But what you're not seeing is this. Your goodness is being used as cushioning to soften the blow of their abusive behavior. It's like someone punching you repeatedly, but apologizing so sweetly afterward, and you, with your tender heart, forgive, not because you're foolish, but because you believe in redemption. But with a narcissist, an apology isn't a promise to change. It's a tactic to maintain control. And if you're not awake to it, you'll find yourself stuck in a never-ending cycle. Hurt, forgive, repeat. Not because you're weak, but because you have a beautiful soul, one that hasn't yet learned how to shield itself. So here's the heartbreaking truth. Kindness without wisdom and boundaries becomes complicity. And when you continue to respond to manipulation with mercy, you're not just hurting yourself, you're enabling the very behavior that's breaking you. This is what leaves so many people confused. They ask, how can I stop loving? Isn't being kind a good thing? The answer is always. Kindness is never wrong, but kindness only has power when it's placed in the right hands. Hands that know how to honor it, protect it, and build with it. Not in the hands of someone who uses it to avoid accountability and inflict more pain. You don't need to become cold or indifferent, but you do need discernment. You don't need to stop loving, but you need to learn to love yourself first. You don't need revenge, but you do need to stop. Stopping is not cruel. It is the most courageous act of compassion, because you cannot heal someone by letting them keep bleeding you dry. You cannot preserve a relationship by losing yourself piece by piece. And you cannot call it love when the price you pay is your peace, your self-worth, and your identity. If kindness is a gift, then you have the right to choose who's worthy of it. And if they use that gift to manipulate you, to hurt you, to make you question your own reality, then it's time to take it back. No one has the right to use your compassion as a shield from consequences. No one has the right to turn your empathy into a cage. You deserve a relationship where kindness is returned with kindness, not with abuse. Part 4. When you no longer have to perform and the narcissist begins to crumble. There's a moment in the healing journey you will never forget. It's not the moment you cried from betrayal. It's not when you filled pages of a journal trying to understand why they did what they did. It's not even the final night you begged for an explanation. That moment arrives in silence. No fanfare, no explosions. Just you not reacting the way you used to. You no longer have to perform. You're no longer forcing a smile to keep the peace. No longer torturing yourself, trying to understand them one more time. No longer chasing to fix what you didn't break. You don't walk away with accusations or a dramatic confrontation. You walk away with awareness. And it is that awareness that causes the narcissist to begin to unravel, because they weren't prepared for it. They were used to the old version of you, the one who always responded, always worried about their feelings, always came back just in time, the one who broke silently, but never actually left. But this time it's different. You're not angry. You don't need to prove they're wrong. You just feel nothing, not numbness, but transcendent. That's the moment when the narcissist loses the one thing they fear most, control. Make no mistake, the The narcissist doesn't fear your hatred. They don't fear being blocked. They don't fear your tears, your rage, or your accusations. Those things to them are still signs that they matter. But when you become calm, silent, and still, you're no longer part of their universe. And to them, that's real death. Because from beginning to end, they weren't seeking love. They were seeking supply. They needed someone to reflect their distorted ego, someone to play the backdrop for their performance as the victim, the savior, or the misunderstood soul. They needed a character to dialogue with to keep their script alive. And you, through your reactions, your compassion, your soft heart, kept that script running all along. But then you stopped playing. You stopped sending long messages. You stopped rehashing the past. You stopped hoping for the day they'd find a change. And the most painful truth for them is this. You didn't do it out of spite. They did it because you actually changed. Your silence is no longer a waiting room, it's a declaration. Your withdrawal is no longer a test, it's a decision. And now the narcissist begins to panic, but they'll never admit it. They'll pretend to be unbothered. Maybe they'll bring up old memories, maybe they'll apologize, but not to make amends, only to see if they can pull you back on stage, to see if you'll still perform. And when they don't get the reaction they're used to, they'll try every trick. Play the victim to trigger your guilt, play the hero to revive your trust, play the stranger to awaken nostalgia. But every attempt fails when you no longer need the story. You've entered a new chapter, one where you don't need a perfect ending to close the past. You've realized that closure doesn't come from them, it comes from inner freedom. And you no longer need anyone to validate what you've lived, what you've felt, what you've survived. That is power, not the kind that forces others to bow down, but the kind that lets you lift your head to yourself because you remembered who you are. Not a version shaped to keep others comfortable, not an accidental healer for a soul that refuses to grow, but a human being, whole, complete, and no longer willing to be twisted ever again. The narcissist may continue the performance. They may find a new audience. They may repaint the old narrative, but you are no longer watching. You walked out, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself more, and that is what they were never prepared to face. Part 5, love cannot save, manipulation, and the truth you must face. You once believed that if you loved someone enough, you could change them. That if you were just a little more patient, a little kinder, give them just one more chance, they would see it, they would wake up, they would go back to being the person you once loved. But that was an illusion, a beautiful illusion, but also a dangerous one. With the narcissist, love is not a path to transformation. Love, to them, is just a tool. They don't love in the way you understand love, not as a connection between two equal souls growing within healing together. For them, it's a stage, and they need a supporting actor. Someone who loves unconditionally, sacrifices endlessly, and never asks for anything in return. They may make you feel special. They may use sweet words, grand promises. But if you look closely, that love doesn't help you grow. It makes you shrink. Day by day, you adjust your emotions to match their moods. You learn to anticipate their reactions to avoid conflict. You stay silent about what hurts you because you don't want to upset them. And you call all of that love. But love isn't disappearing into yourself to hold on to someone. Love isn't silencing your pain to avoid emotional punishment. Love should never cost you your self-respect. If you're in a relationship where you must constantly explain yourself, apologize for your real feelings, and reshape your needs to avoid setting them off, you're not in love. You're being conditioned. True love does not require you to be approved before being yourself. The painful truth is, a narcissist doesn't change when you love them more. They change only when you stop allowing them to exploit that love. The more you yield, the more they push. The more you forgive, the more they test your limits. The more you sacrifice, the more they take it as their entitlement. This isn't blindness on your part, it's strategy on theirs. They know you'll love with a compassionate heart. They know you'll ask, am I being too demanding? Instead of declaring, I deserve to be loved respectfully. A narcissist won't apologize for hurting you. They'll make you apologize for feeling hurt. And you, with your boundless kindness and desire to build something meaningful, will start making excuses for them. They didn't mean it. They've been through so much. They're just stressed. You're not wrong for being empathetic. But empathy without boundaries becomes a form of self-destruction. You cannot save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And you cannot use love to heal a disorder built on manipulation, deceit, and the need to control others. Perhaps the cruelest part of the awakening journey is realizing there's nothing more you can do. You've loved, you've waited, you've forgiven, and every ounce was taken for granted. You gave everything, only to receive ambiguity, coldness, betrayal, wrapped in sweet words and emotional violence delivered through silence. And still you stayed, not because you didn't know, but because you hoped. Yeah, you hoped that if you was just a little better, things would change. But what you didn't see was that very hope was being used against you. To a narcissist, hope is a tool. It's bait to keep you in the cycle. It's what allows them to avoid changing because they know you'll always give one more chance. And that's exactly why you have to stop. Not because you no longer love them, but because you start to love yourself. Stopping is not failure. It is liberation. No longer staying it's your cruelty, it's maturity. Because no love is real if it requires you to disappear a little more each day. No apology is sincere if it comes after every repeated wound. And no one is worth sacrificing your identity, peace, and dignity just to keep them around. Let your love go to someone who honors it. Let your compassion be shared with someone who's also willing to heal alongside you. Love can't fix manipulation, but self-respect can. Part 6. When you lose your boundaries, you lose yourself. No one enters a relationship thinking they'll lose themselves. You begin with sincerity, with hope, with the belief that if two people love each other enough, they can overcome anything. But what you realize is this: losing yourself doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens quietly through the smallest concessions. Through one time you stayed silent to avoid tension. Through one time you gave in even though it felt unfair. Through one time you told yourself it's fine, it's just a small thing. And slowly your sense of self begins to fade. You stop saying what you really want to say. You stop doing what brings you joy. You stop feeling safe inside your own emotional home. Worse, you begin to feel guilty for simply having needs. You're afraid to ask for respect, fearing you'll be labeled too demanding. You hesitate to show your hurt, afraid of being called too sensitive. You avoid setting boundaries, terrified that they'll leave. And you call all of this love. But love is not dissolution. Love is not sacrificing your inner safety to maintain someone else's presence. Love does not mean abandoning yourself to be accepted. Narcissists understand this deeply. They don't control you with chains. They control you through subtle erosion. A slight mocking comment, a raised eyebrow that silences you, a cold shoulder that forces you to comfort them first. Each of these behaviors is a test. And if you don't react, if you let it slide, if you appease, they learn that you can be adjusted. Boundaries, the clearest expression of identity, begin to erode into permanent compromise. And at that point, you're no longer you. You become a programmed version of yourself, reshaped to accommodate their emotional instability. What's worse is you don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. You find yourself exhausted and you don't know why. You live in a constant state of alertness. You lose trust in your own thoughts, instincts, and even memories. You begin to doubt reality and believe you are the problem. This is the result of a psychological weapon the narcissist uses to maintain control: gaslighting, making you believe your emotions and perceptions are unreliable. And once you accept that lie, you hand them full control over your sense of truth. At that point, you no longer ask, is this right? But instead, will they get angry if I bring this up? You're no longer living consciously. You're surviving in an emotional gray zone where everything depends on their moods. And this is how the narcissist keeps you, not through love, but through fear. The fear of being abandoned if you dare to live authentically. But do you know what's even scarier than losing someone? Losing yourself and not even realizing it. When you abandon your boundaries, you send a message to yourself. My emotional safety doesn't matter. My worth is negotiable. I'll endure anything as long as they stay. And so you silence your inner voice, the voice that once told you what's right, what's enough, what's too far. You stop saying no, not because you agree, but because you're too tired to fight. You stop asking questions, not because you understand, but because you've grown used to not being allowed to ask. And in that silence, you lose the most precious thing: your connection to yourself. But here's the good news. You can get it back by remembering that boundaries are not punishments. They are protection. They are not walls to divide. They are doors with locks. allowing you to choose who enters your inner world. Boundaries don't make you selfish. They make you healthy. Boundaries don't make you distant. They help you maintain safe distance from what causes harm. And if someone sees your self-respect as a threat, they never truly loved you the right way. Because real love does make you shrink. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your dignity to stay. Real love begins when you love yourself enough to accept nothing less than respect. You once believed that if you were kind enough, patient enough, loving enough, the relationship would change. But today, you're beginning to realize the deeper truth. Love cannot survive if you have to sacrifice yourself just to sustain it. You've tried everything. Staying silent to keep the peace, forgiving to rebuild, sacrificing in the hope that one day they would finally see your worth. But they didn't, because they never wanted to. To a narcissist, your kindness isn't a treasure, it's a tool. Every time you step back, they step forward. Every time you soften, they test the limits. And every time you forgive, they learn one thing: you won't leave. But what they never expected is this. But one day, you wouldn't need to leave in anger. You would simply wake up. Awakening is when you stop reacting the way you used to. Awakening is when you no longer feel guilty for setting boundaries. Awakening is when you stop performing, stop pleasing, stop convincing yourself that it's not really that bad. And when you awaken, you don't just walk away from them. You return to yourself. You no longer live just to be accepted. You no longer love in exchange for being allowed to exist. You no longer forgive just to hold someone in place. You live because you know you are worthy. You love because you are free, and you forgive, but that no longer means allowing the same hurt to happen again. You deserve a love that doesn't make you shrink. You deserve respect that doesn't have to be begged for. You deserve a life where your kindness isn't weaponized against you. You're on the path of awakening. If you've ever asked yourself, was I wrong for loving too much? The answer is no, but now it's time to love yourself even more. If these words have touched something in you, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss more powerful healing messages to come. And share this video with someone who might be silently fighting their own invisible battle in a toxic relationship. Because sometimes all it takes is the right message at the right time to save a soul that's slowly fading. You are not alone, and your journey back to yourself starts now.